So because it's a live theater show, I got to remind you, like, turn off your cell phones and all your noisemakers and all that stuff. Yeah, we didn't have a curtain speech, so this is it. This is Awkward Teenage Years, everybody. If you're not familiar with our show, the title pretty much tells you everything you need to know. This is going to be a true storytelling show about our awkward teenage years. You're going to hear from 5 of the best storytellers that New York City has to offer, all right here behind me, and from me, unfortunately, I'm sorry. Just a little bit. I'm just hosting tonight. My name is Will Clegg, and I'll be introducing you to these fine folks in just a few minutes. So I just, it's summertime, right? Finally, that's the song that we came out to, Alice Cooper's "School's Out for Summer." Like, it feels like that right now. I feel like we've all just been inside for 16 months, and the final bell is just rung, and now we're out, and we're here, and it's amazing. I've been thinking about it a lot over the last few days, and thinking about like what it was like as a teenager when school was finally out for the summer, like how exciting that was, right? Maybe you're going out to some adventure with your family that you may or may not want to go on, or you're getting like a summer job, you're going to camp. I know there's all this like hope, imbued in that final day of school. Then there's also like some anxiety, at least there was for me, when I was especially like 12, 13, 14, thinking a lot about like going to the beach and going to the pool and bathing suits. Bathing suits as a teenager is like a real double-edged sword, because like you're very hormonal, you're very excited to see everybody else in their bathing suits, but then you don't want to be in your bathing suit, because if you're at all aware of your body, like there's something about it that you probably hate, right? Or maybe all of it. I don't know. I mean, for me, it was I was just really scrawny, and I was a late bloomer, so a lot of my peers were like starting to get stronger, facial hair, and I was just like still had the high voice, pretending to have a low voice, and I didn't want to be seen in a bathing suit, and also like the big thing too is as a young man, unexpected boners. Yeah, no good. That was my least favorite thing about being a teenager, I think. Like in school, it's just the worst. Like you think about anything sexual, anything at all, really, and you get an erection. And like if you're in math class, there's the fear of like getting called up to have to like answer a problem at the board. What do? You're shamed for the rest of the year at minimum. And then if you're make it through class not having to stand up, and then the bell rings, now you have to get up and go out into the hallway. So we come up with coping mechanisms, right? Like I learned to wear very long, oversized T-shirts, which thankfully in the mid to early 90s, mid 90s, they were in style. And then I also had to learn to do a little maneuver that I think a lot of the guys are going to know. You have to tuck it under your belt. And yeah, but you have to do it without anybody knowing what you're doing, right? Because otherwise, like you look like a serious pervert in the middle of your class. So I don't know. It's just it's the worst. But then if you're at the beach or in the pool and you get an unexpected boner, you're in the pool for a while now. There's nothing you can do about it. And if you're in the ocean and the waves are crashing, or it's time to leave or whatever, you have to get out of the ocean. You walk down the shore 50 yards, pretend to be looking for interesting seashells. I don't know. I remember the summertime being fraught with anxiety, but I'm glad it's here now. I'm an adult now, and I have a little bit more control over my body, thankfully. So I'm gonna get the show started now. I'm gonna bring up your first storyteller. He's got a great story of a summer job that I'm very excited for you all to hear. He is a 4-time Story Slam winner at the Moth. He has 2 solo shows that he's been performing just recently in Orlando, one of them, and Cincinnati, called Dangerous When Wet and I Favor My Daddy. I'm very excited to welcome to the stage Mr. Jamie Brickhouse.
Because that story kind of turned me on. So I did not want any of my friends to know that I was working at Whataburger. But more than that, I didn't want any of my friends to see me in my Whataburger uniform. By the way, this was in Beaumont, Texas, in the summer of 1984. I'm 16 years old, and the fast food chain is What a Burger, but it's one word, Whataburger. But I always grew up thinking it was Waterburger because that's how everyone. Let's get a burger. Let's go to Waterburger. Let's go to Waterburger. And I liked Waterburger until I had to work there. And my mother came into my room one day and she said, "There is a new Waterburger opening in our neighborhood and you need to get a summer job. Now, I want you to go down there and apply right now." I was like, "Why? I mean, you make lots of money. You just put a pool in. What? You need to get a summer job and you need to get some perspective on the world out there. You lead a sheltered life and you need your own spending money. I pay for everything else, but you can get that job to pay for your fun and pay for your gas." Well, I was an obedient kid, so I applied and I got the job. But it was the uniform. It was a short sleeve shirt of plaid, orange, brown, and white, Waterburger colors, of the slickest, cheapest polyester, shit brown polyester pants with matching shit brown newsboy cap. Yeah. And so right away I was put on the grill, and I had to work, I had to flip hamburgers and grill onions. And I thought, this sucks. This is going to exacerbate my acne that I've just gotten under control. And I wanted to work at one of the cashier stands. But there was reverse sexism going on because all the girls got that job because they thought it was better to have them up there. But then the more I thought about it, I thought, that's a better deal because my risk of exposure is much less. No one's going to see me back there. But I was in this new Waterburger, which was where all my classmates went in that neighborhood. And my best friends, Nicole and Hunter, they were a couple. And they were dying to see. I said, "No, you cannot come see me. You cannot come see me." And I remember one day I'm back there flipping burgers, and I hear Nicole's unmistakable voice on the drive-through speaker. And after she says that yes, she would like 2 fries with those 2 burgers, I hear her say, "Is Jamie Brickhouse working?" And the attendant says, "Yes, he is working, but he can't. He's busy. We don't allow our workers to come to the window." I was like, "Oh, thank God!" And I thought, I can't risk this. And then I heard the unmistakable cackle of Hunter, just laughing his head off. So a week later, they said that they needed employees at the other Waterburger across town, the trashier, older Waterburger. And I thought, you know what? I raised my hand as fast as I could because no one would see me over there because none of my friends went over there. So I go to that Waterburger and talk about a dash of reality. The manager there was this super mean lesbian, tall and hulking, like Patty, Peppermint Patty's mean sister. And then there was the woman who did the takeout. She was about 7 months pregnant and was unwed. And then there was Never, this older lady who looked kind of like a Carol Burnett character who was terrified that she was going to get fired over any minor infraction. She said, "I need this job." And so she knew all of Whataburger's rules and do's and don'ts. She had memorized them, and she would constantly tell you, never put water on the grill. Never start frying the onions until you've already flipped the burger. Never take a personal call. Well, one day, the lady who was pregnant, she took a personal call on the wall phone next to the drive-through window, and she just lost it. She had a meltdown. I guess she was talking to her boyfriend. She says, "What do you mean you're quitting your job? How are we going to pay for this baby? This baby's coming in 3 months." And then never starts saying, never take personal calls. Never. I was like, you know what? Leave her alone. And her mascara was running, and she tore off her headset and said, "Someone's got to cover for me." And about that, and the whole place was like going up in flames that week because the manageress, mean Peppermint Patty, usually what her routine was, she would come in when it was her shift and she would bark orders at you. "Clean that grill, wipe down that counter. Why aren't these onions chopped?" And then she would go in the back office, slam the door, and yell at her girlfriend on the phone the whole time. And as a little gay kid who was in the closet, this was an eye-opening experience for me. And About a week after the takeout waitress had her meltdown, Peppermint Patty is in the back, and she is having, it's like the Tasmanian devil is in that office, and she's screaming all kinds of crap at her girlfriend, and then I hear the phone slam against the wall, and then silence. And then everyone, there's almost no customers in there, thank God, and we just all look at each other, and never, never, never is just terrified. And about 30 minutes later, this woman arrives. She said, "Where's Lisa?" Lisa was the Peppermint Patty. I said, she's in the back, and then I feel Lisa behind me. She says, "What are you doing at my work? I told you not to come to my work." "Well, if you didn't hang up on me, I wouldn't be here." "Well, if you weren't hanging out with that girl, I wouldn't." And then the fights exploded, and then they got into a brawl. And I mean, ketchup was flying everywhere. The salt and pepper shakers were being turned over. There was like maybe one customer in there. He ran out of there. And we're just standing there like this, and Never, Never, Never just says, kind of under her breath, "Never, never bring your personal problems to work. Never, never, never bring your personal problems to work." But she couldn't say it any louder than that because she thought, Peppermint Patty would haul off and hit her. And so they're screaming about, making truck payments, and, and if the girlfriend leaves her, how's she going to make her truck payment? And this job is, barely cutting the deal, and all this stuff. And the fight finally broke up. But I had one privilege there, and that privilege was that I got to once a week, Peppermint Patty let me drive to the bank to make the cash deposit. And I remember the first time she handed me that white vinyl zip bag with all the cash in it. She told me what to do, and she said, "Don't fuck it up. I trust you." Well, I loved that privilege, because even though I risked exposure by being out in public in my Whataburger uniform, it got me out of there for like about 30 to 45 minutes. And I would drive as slowly as possible. I would hit every stoplight, every red light. And I wasn't worried about the bank because the bank was downtown and no one that I knew used that bank. But I had to get out of my car and go in because they didn't have a drop-off window. And so I parked my car in the scorching parking lot. This is Beaumont, Texas in the summer. Beaumont is like 97 degrees on a cool day and about 150% humidity. So just the walk from my car to the bank in my polyester unbreathable uniform, I was already a sweat ball by the time I got into the bank, and I felt like I was naked in that uniform. So I go in, I make the deposit, and I'm walking back out to my car, and I'm headed to my car, and I reach into my pocket, and no keys. And I reach into the other pocket, no keys. And I get to the car, and I go, "Nope, it's locked." And I look in the window, and there are the keys in the ignition. Fuck. And my parents are out of town. And so the only thing I can do, the only person who knows how to get in my house that I trust is my best friend, Nicole. And so I go back into the bank, and I ask to use their phone, and I call my friend, Nicole, and I tell her that I've locked myself out, and then I tell her what I'm doing. She says, "You're in your uniform?" I said, "Yes, I'm in my uniform at the bank. Could you please just go? Here's how to get into the house. Here's where the extra keys are." She's like, "Okay, I'll be there." And so I'm waiting, and I feel like I am sitting on a toilet naked in the middle of that bank lobby. And then I have to call Mean Peppermint Patty and tell her what happened. "Well, you dumb fuck. All right, well, get back here as fast as you can. I ought to clock you out." But I won't. So then I'm waiting, and I look up, and I see Nicole driving up in her mother's silver Lincoln Mark IV, and she pulls up, and then I see there's another head in there, and the passenger side of the window slides down, and there's Hunter just cackling. Hunter, who is this amazing snob, and neither one of them had summer jobs. I had summer jobs. I'm standing there, a big sweat ball in my orange plaid top and my shit brown pants and my shit brown newsboy cap, and he hands me the keys, and he just laughs. And Nicole says, "Nice outfit." I said, "Thanks. Thanks a lot. And thanks for getting the keys." And they leave, and you know what? My worst fear happened. They saw me. And it was humiliating. And it stung. But I didn't die, and my skin didn't melt away, especially under that protective coating of that polyester uniform. and they remained my friends. And I thought, my worst drama in working at Whataburger that summer was being seen and how I was going to spend my spending money, which I spent my money on nice clothes and gas money and buying booze I shouldn't have been buying, and then sneaking into the local gay bar downtown. That's how I spent my money. I didn't have to worry about how I was going to pay for a baby that was going to be born in 3 months, or pay for my girlfriend's car note, or was so terrified that I was going to lose this job that I was never going to get another job again. And did it teach me some humility? Yeah, it did. And did it teach me that I wanted to go to college so I never had to work in a place like that, like my mother said? Yes. And the next summer, did I work there again? No. I worked at Dryden's for Men, a fancy men's clothing store, where almost all of my earnings went back into their coffers because I bought all of their clothes. But I wish to hell that I had that Whataburger uniform that made me feel so ashamed, because today, if I had it, I would be wearing it right now as I told this story, and I'd be wearing it as proud as a peacock. Thank you.
Story really reminds me of like my summer jobs. I worked at Starbucks and Baskin Robbins, among some others. But I'm just thinking of all the people that I worked with and those those crazy dramas and stories. So maybe I'll have a good story for our next show, based on that. But once again, let's give it up for Jamie Brickhouse. All right, your next storyteller. He is a Moth Story Slam winner, and he's also been featured on the Risk live show and podcast. Really excited to have him here. Please welcome my friend David Hu.
I remember when I was 14 years old, I'm on my way to school one morning, and I heard someone scream, "You fucking chink, go back to China and eat a bowl of rice." Startled, because I don't like rice. And I look around, and I see this middle-aged white man standing on his porch, giving me the middle finger. His name is Mr. Bazooka. And every morning, on my way to school, I have to pass by Mr. Bazooka's house, and he's always cursing me out and giving me the middle finger. I feel like a moving target for this guy's racist gratification, and it's putting me on edge. And I tell my folks, and they confront him one day. And the following afternoon, someone threw a brick through my parents' window. Luckily, no one got hurt. After that incident, we stood out like a yellow post-it on a white picket fence, because I live in a predominantly white neighborhood called Pelham Parkway in the Bronx. And everyone called us chink, go back to China, eat a bowl of rice, threatened to break our window and kill us. It was disgusting, and I hated living in that neighborhood. And I begged Mom and Dad to move, but they were like, "No, Gong Gong bought this house. Gong Gong wants us to stay. No, okay?" Gong Gong means grandfather in Chinese. And I was confused. I felt like I was in Twilight Zone. But looking back at it today, it actually made sense. Mom and Dad immigrated to New York from Hong Kong in 1970 for a better life. With only $500 in their pocket, they only could afford an apartment on Valentine's Avenue in the Bronx, also known as a heroin district. During that time, New York City was just plagued with crime, drugs, and violence. And I remember back in the early 80s, 7 years old, born and raised in the Bronx, the lobby of our building was like a fucking zoo. Just chock full of shit and puke, made me nauseous every day. As soon as we walked into the apartment, Mom and Dad never let me outside to play. There were no kids my age to hang out with, and we were literally the only Chinese family in a predominantly black and Hispanic neighborhood. We stood out like a yellow box of Whitman's assorted chocolates. And I spent my days watching TV. Some of my favorite TV shows growing up was Family Ties and Growing Pains. And I fantasized about one day living in a house with a backyard, surrounded by trees, in a predominantly white neighborhood, just like Ricky Schroeder. And one night, my dad got stabbed. And luckily, he survived. And after that incident, my gong gave my folks $45,000 in cash, his entire life savings, to put a down payment on a house. And we moved to a predominantly white neighborhood called Pelham Parkway in the Bronx. Bought a house, backyard surrounded by trees. I had my own room. It was a picture-perfect dream that became my worst nightmare. We now have bars on our windows. We keep the porch light on all night. I feel like I'm living in a prison, and the only advice my folks have is, "Mo gonga, just go the other way, the long way to school." One afternoon, I'm on my way home from school, and guess who I see? Jerry, this crazy Vietnam vet that lives across the street from me. And it's like this: "Hey kid, yeah, come here. Why? I got something for you." "What?" "It's in my apartment." "Okay." And I walk into his apartment, and he hands me a hammer. He said, "Next time you see that motherfucker, I want you to beat the shit out of him until he dies." I'm like, "Cool, thanks." I was hoping for candy, but I'll take a hammer instead. The next morning, I'm getting ready for school. And guess what? The long way is under construction. So my only way to school is I have to pass by Mr. Bazooka's house. I'm scared as shit. I think this guy's going to kill me. So I take that hammer Jerry gave me and I put it in my knapsack. And I remember walking by his house. I felt this bottomless pit in my stomach. I was like out of breath. Anxiety was running through my veins. And I don't see him on his porch. I see him walking down the street. And I follow him. As I get closer, he suddenly falls to the ground face first. It sounded like a sack of potatoes. Boom! And I was startled and buckled. And I'm standing over him. And he's convulsing like a fish out of water. And he has his hand on his chest, and his other hand is extended towards me. And I stare at him, and I see a reflection of my dad. The night he got stabbed, helpless and scared. I remember I was 7 years old, standing in the kitchen with my mom. It was close to midnight, and I heard someone approach the door of our apartment and put the key in the lock. And my mom walks over to the door and looks through the peephole. It's my dad. And she's like, "What's going on? How come you can't open the door?" And I hear footsteps. And they're getting louder and louder. And I wonder, who is that? And I hear someone scream, "Give me your money! I'll cut the throat, you fucking chink!" Followed by screaming, fists, and sounds of a struggle as my mom looked through that peephole in fear. The noises were brief. However, the trauma lasted a lifetime. And I hear that key turn the lock. My dad rushes in the apartment. And my mom slams at it short and locks every lock on the door. And I see my dad, white as a ghost. He's shaking like a leaf, and he's holding his fist in his hand. And I could see the blood dripping through the knuckles of his fingers onto the kitchen floor. It's glossy, bright, and red. And I stand there and I stare at it. It's a lot to process for a 7-year-old, especially after his bedtime. And my mom's like, "David, go back to sleep. No trouble." And I remember my mom was wrapping my dad's hand over a kitchen towel. I lay myself to sleep. I close my eyes, and I hear a voice, "Help me, please, my pills, help me." And I open my eyes, and I realize I'm still standing over Mr. Bazooka as he struggles to gasp for air. And I run over to the neighbor's house, and I bang the door. Boom, boom, boom. They yell, "What's up?" I said, "Listen, just call an ambulance. I think this guy's about to die." An ambulance rolls up. And after that incident, I wonder, is Mr. Bazooka okay? A couple weeks later, I'm on my way to school, and I pass by Mr. Bazooka's house, and I see him sitting on the porch. He looks really weak. He's sitting down with a cane, and I walk by, and he struggles to get up. And we stare at each other, and he's like, "You fucking chink, die and eat a bowl of rice." I'm like, "Fucking chink, die and eat a bowl of rice? What kind of logic is that?" And I smile and I walk away. Eventually he died. And a Cambodian family moved in. A year later, we had a Black and Hispanic family move to the block. The fabric of hate became extinct because my neighborhood became gentrified. Every time I sit down and eat a bowl of rice, I think about Mom and Dad how to immigrate to New York from Hong Kong for a better life, and how racism and hate made them resilient to the challenges of being an immigrant in this country. And it made me who I am today. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Dave. I heard an abridged version of that story at the Moth last year in the before times. And man, it's just so cinematic. I love it. And hearing the extended version tonight was just great. And hearing that Mr. Bazooka is no longer with us gives me a little comfort as well. Hopefully it does for y'all. All right, let's keep this show going. Sorry, one more time for David Hu. Okay, next up, we've got a co-creator of this very show. And before I get to him, I just want to say this show actually started as a part of Frigid New York, which is the theater company that runs this theater and Under St. Mark's. Just before the pandemic, we were the last people at last show that some people saw right before the pandemic began, actually. We did a 5-show run at Under St. Mark's Theater. And so we're super excited, obviously, to be back with the same theater company for our first show back from the pandemic. And that's all to say that this guy helped me put it together. And we've been putting shows together throughout the pandemic on Zoom and Twitch, which you can find on our YouTube page. And he's also the author of a solo show called A Public-Private Prayer. And I'm very pleased to introduce Mr. Grant Bowen.
Hold on, let's do this. It is so nice to be looking at all of you and not on Zoom. So thank you all for coming out. This is amazing. One more time for Will, especially for opening the show to talk about his boner. So I'm from Gardendale, Alabama. Yep. And thank you. And growing up, I went to Gardendale's First Baptist Church. And there was this particular message in our church that was ever present. Like, I heard it from my first grade Sunday school teacher all the way up to our head pastor during one of his sermons. And that message was, everyone has a hole in their heart. And it's a hole that leaves them feeling lonely and unfulfilled. And some people try to fill this hole with drugs and alcohol. Some people try to fill this hole with money and success. Some people try to seek the approval of others. But the one thing that can fill that hole in everyone's heart was Jesus. And that's why it was part of our job as Christians to lead others to Christ, minister to the lost, share God's word with them, and show them how they can live better lives with Jesus in their hearts. Now, I had been baptized at 6 years old. And I was nothing as a kid if not an anxious little rule follower. So I would hear this in church and I would think, well, okay, if this is what God wants me to do, then I have to try to lead others to Christ. There are a few roadblocks with that plan, though. First of all, I was in Alabama going to a Southern Baptist megachurch in a town that already had 25 different churches. Everyone around me was already a Christian. Like, the bubble was real. Like, who was I going to talk to? And on top of that, like, I was awkward as hell. I didn't know if I could carry on a conversation like that. Asking my friends to the movies was hard enough as it was without me going, oh, by the way, have you heard the good news about our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ? But I still felt like I needed that opportunity. Like, this was my community. And if I wasn't participating in my faith, I was worried they'd think I was faking it. And then I would end up lonely and unfulfilled. So eventually I'd get to high school. And every now and then our high school ministry planned what we called mission trips. These were trips where we would go, do some kind of community service or volunteer work, and lead some praise and worship. And I liked going on these. I genuinely thought they were a lot of fun, and it gave me a chance to fake my way through socializing. So our high school ministry plans this. Our high school ministry plans this one mission trip to go clean up a smaller church
in a struggling lower income neighborhood that was predominantly African American. And our high school ministry was predominantly not African American. Yeah, strap in, this is a white savior mission. So the day comes, the kids and the youth ministers, we all load up in the vans, we take the road trip there, and this neighborhood is rough. I mean, we're talking broken windows, graffiti, garbage everywhere, you know, like outside. But the church is this nice, quaint little white building in the middle of it all. And their pastors come out, and they are very sweet and kind and helpful. So we go in and we start helping them clean the place up. This was also the day of that church's big community barbecue. This was an event where everyone in the neighborhood, whether they went to the church or not, could come and get something to eat. So we go out to the parking lot, we pop up some tables, we lay all the food out in a buffet-style spread, you know, pulled pork, baked beans, potato salad, and people start showing up and filling their plates. Now, before we started doing all this work, before we even got off the van, our youth ministers took the time to tell us, now keep in mind, not everyone coming to this barbecue goes to the church. So this might be a good time for you to try to minister to someone. So I'm standing there with my plate of food, and I look over, and I see these two guys who look like they might be about my age. One's kind of taller, he's wearing a hoodie and a gold chain, and the other one's my height. He's wearing a do-rag, a bright red tracksuit, which is unzipped to show that he is in better shape than I ever will be in my entire life. To me, these were two pretty tough-looking guys. And for some reason, upon seeing them, this kid, in his polo shirt and khaki pants, thinks to himself, all right, Bowen, this is your chance. Eye of the tiger, let's go make some new Christians. So I go over, we start talking, they're very chill, it gets off to a good start, and then I start trying to work my way into it. I'm like, so do you guys go to the church? Is that something you might be interested in? Do you know Jesus? I'm not being very subtle at all. And they know, they are onto me, they know exactly what I'm doing. Like, they immediately look at each other like, pfft. So the guy in the do-rag looks me in the eye and he goes like, hey man, let me ask you something. In the Bible, when the Pharisees asked Jesus if he was the Son of God, what did he say? And I was like, oh, that's easy. He said, and my mind went blank. I couldn't think of it. I couldn't think of anything. Like I'm going through all my years of Bible story knowledge and nothing is coming to mind. And eventually, like I'm stammering, and the guy in the do-rag cuts me off and goes, Luke 22:70. And when they asked him, are you then the Son of God? Jesus responded, you say that I am. You say it. Jesus never said he was the Son of God, so why should I believe that he is? And I had nothing, because I was not prepared for good questions. And eventually I just am kind of like, oh yeah, you know, that's a good point. Anyway, you guys have a good day. And I just move off to the side, because I'm so embarrassed in that moment. Like I can't even look back at them, because I've been going to church my whole life. I'm supposed to know this stuff. And now here I am getting schooled in my Bible knowledge by two complete strangers who I thought were non-believers. But then again, they never actually said. Maybe I was just making a judgment based on how they looked. And maybe they could tell that I was trying to be something I wasn't. And if that was the case, then what did that say about me? Like, if this is what God wanted me to do, then why did it feel so unnatural? And so we get to the end of the trip. We're on the vans taking the road trip back to Gardendale. I'm telling youth ministers about this. And of course, they're trying to be optimistic. They're like, well, now you know. You know, for next time. And I remember thinking, I don't think there's gonna be a next time. I learned that that wasn't my calling. And it would be a few years later before I learned that the more I tried to do the things I thought I was supposed to do, that's when I felt that hole in my heart the most. Thank you.
Ah, yes. Disillusionment with religion, a teenage rite of passage. Yes. I got that pretty strong in my teenage years too. When I learned that I didn't actually have to go to Sunday school, that it wasn't going to be on like my permanent record or whatever, I would just go and they would take the roll and then I would just stand up and slowly walk out. And the teacher would be like, "We're going to tell your parents." I'm like, "Tell them. It's okay. They know that I don't want to be here." And I would sit in the lobby for the entire rest of the hour until my parents came to pick me up. So my mom's watching the live stream. Sorry, Mom. It's one of her least favorite stories, but I gotta bring it up since Grant did. One more time for Grant Bowen, everybody. All right, your next storyteller. He is an author. He is also a 4-time winner at the Moth, including the most recent Moth that they had at the Bell House, the first one since the pandemic. And he's one of my favorite people. So please welcome to the stage, Mr. Devan Sandiford.
Thank you. So I'm 18 years old. I'm a senior in high school, and I'm jumping on this trampoline at one of my classmates' house. And there's 2 other boys there with me. They're jumping on the trampoline, but they are like doing these like crazy front and back flips. And I'm trying to fit in. I'm trying to do the best I can, but I also don't want to break my neck. So I decided that I'm not going to do that. What I'll do, the tricks that I'll do is like jump off of the trampoline onto the grassy area where we are. And I do that a few times, and I'm like, yeah, this is working out great. I'm fitting right in with these guys. And just right out of nowhere, they just like walk away. And I'm like, oh, I guess I wasn't doing such a good job. And I don't really want to stay at the trampoline jumping by myself. Like, that seems weird. So I'm at my senior class Vespers. I go to this Seventh-day Adventist Christian school. And so Vespers is not like a party. We have 0 alcohol. But it's more so just we get together, gathering, and everyone comes together and talks about great things that we enjoyed and things like that. And so I decide I'm going to go look for the next group of friends to try and mix with. I'm a 4-sport athlete at my high school, and so I think to myself, like, you know, I can always fit in wherever I go. And so I go to the next group, and I start like mixing with them and talking with them, and one by one I see that like slowly they're starting to like walk away, and it's like really weird because I'm like I usually can fit in with all of these groups. I just don't know what's going on. And all I really want from this class Vespers, it's the last class Vespers of the year, and I just want to mix with everybody that I've known since like the first grade, the last 12 years. And so I decide I'm not going to let this hold me down. I'm just going to find the next group. And I go off and I find the next group, and this time I'm like over by the snack table. It's this really huge house. It's basically like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air's house, except bigger. And so I'm like, you know, there's always more friends. This is not that bad. I go over to the snack table, and I find some more friends, and I'm making jokes, and I'm like, we're laughing, but sure enough, one by one, they like start to walking away, and I'm starting to feel like pretty rejected, and I'm not really sure what's going on. My dad is actually a teacher at my school, and so the first thing that comes to my mind is like, oh, like maybe it's my dad again. I've had to like do this whole process since I entered into high school of having to like show that I'm disconnected from my dad, and so like I'll be in his class and I will like just blurt out some type of crazy joke and have people laugh. And it usually had worked up until then. And so I'm like, you know, maybe it's my dad, but I don't know. At the same time, it's like I have all these friends and they're really close to me. I don't understand what's going on, and I'm really trying to figure this out. And I walk inside. The sponsors have gotten us all together and gathered us in this huge living room that has like, I don't know, 30-foot ceiling, and it has a huge chandelier, and they tell us to sit down in a circle. And they want us to like sit by each other, and we're going to do this activity where we're sharing things. And I find one of my closer friends, and I'm like, finally, like, I don't know why I didn't find her earlier, but this girl had been somebody that I had talked to off and on. We had kind of like had somewhat of a relationship, but not girlfriend and boyfriend. And so I sit down next to her, and I'm like, hey, how are you? Like, when did you get here? And she's like, I got here like 30 minutes ago. And we're like going back and forth about like our last week of school and how the things that we're excited for in graduation. And right in the middle of when I'm saying something, she's like, you know what? I forgot that I had to like, there's a friend, and she like obviously is making up something on the fly, and I'm like, okay, you know, just go. And at this point, I'm like starting to like get really down and rejected about myself, and I'm kind of hanging my head, And as I like go to hang my head, I look down and I see that there's this dog crap on my pants. And I'm like, oh, like I didn't see, like nobody told me anything. Nobody had like this extra crazy look about like, you know, a bad smell or anything like that. But like now at least I know like, why didn't these people just say something? So I get up really quickly and I rush to the bathroom and I like get a tissue and I like softly take it off. And then once it's the big piece of it's off, it's like maybe the size of my palm. It's no, not the size of my palm, but a little bit smaller than that. And I get it off and I start to like get some soap and a paper towel and I start scrubbing it, trying to make sure that there's like nothing that you can see. And then I dry it and try to make sure there's no smell. And I look around to see if there's any other dog poop on me. And I'm like, you know what? It must have been when I was jumping on that trampoline because I had like fallen off and like rolled on the ground a few times. I don't have a dog myself. And so it must have been when that, and that's why everybody's been avoiding me. And I'm like, okay, it's mostly cleaned off now. And I go back out to the party and like, let me see if I can salvage this night. And I find another seat on the ground and the sponsors tell us to start, you know, sharing our favorite moments from our time at the school. And some of my classmates start, some of the ones that have been with me since first grade. And the first person that starts talking about this game that we used to play in first grade. It was this like awesome game where the girls would chase after the boys and the girls would try and kiss the boys and they'd corner us and they'd smother us with all these kisses. And everyone's like, yes, I remember that. And everyone's like laughing and having this great time. And sure enough, all the people who've been there 12 years with me are starting to say that same story. And for me, as they're sharing that story, I'm like now dreading this moment, because while that moment was this funny, great moment for them, it was like complete opposite for me. I had started at the school in first grade and I was just one of 2 black people in my first grade class. And rather than being chased by the girls were actually afraid of me and wouldn't even touch me. And as a 6-year-old, I didn't understand why. I just felt like everyone's avoiding me. And I couldn't figure out why. I didn't know anything about blackness at the time until people started talking to me about like, you know, the color of your skin is like poop. And they wanted to know why. And they wanted to know why my top lip was brown. And later that year, one of my classmates called me the N-word and I didn't even know what it was, but it sounded bad. And when I asked my parents, like sure enough, they told me what it was. And as everyone's telling the story of this kissing game moment, I'm searching in my head to try and find like a moment that is going to eclipse this and everyone's going to forget about talking about the kissing game and we're going to start talking about this new thing that I come up with. And as it's getting closer and closer to me, I'm like, my mind's racing. I don't have anything that's that great. And so the only thing I can pull out is like in 5th grade, there was this boy that had gone into the bathroom and seconds after walking into the bathroom, he like quickly rushed out and had looked up and he thought he went into the girls' bathroom, but it was actually the boys' bathroom. And I tell everyone this story and like, there's a couple of laughs, but I'm like, dang it. Like that wasn't the moment that I was looking for to eclipse this. But it's not my turn anymore. I'm at least glad to be done with this. As soon as I can get out of this house, I'll be excited to move on from here. And it actually comes around to one of my longtime friends, and he says that he remembers the kissing game as well. But what he remembers most is how funny I was in first grade. That I used to like run around the bathrooms with a wet paper towel, pretending like I was some type of maniac, and that they could dare me to do anything. And there would be these times where I would like pull down my pants and moon the entire classroom, and everyone would start busting up laughing. And as we're sitting in this circle, and he's telling these stories about me, like everyone is laughing again, and I'm laughing too. Except that as he's telling this story, I'm realizing that all the ways that I've used to fit in with all these different groups at my school, and the humor and my charismatic nature, all these things I learned in that moment when I had to stare into the faces of those girls and realize that I was just not like everyone at my school. And as a 12th grader, using the humor and trying to find that funny story about the kid that went into the bathroom, I realized that I've been using this really adolescent way of trying to deal with this pain, and that no matter how funny I get, I can't scrub away my skin. And there's nothing that I can do in that moment other than to stop trying to be so funny and to realize that I have to face this problem. And in that moment, I realized that I am ready to move on to college and to start addressing my problems in a different way. Thank you.
Thanks. Devan Sandiford, everybody. Thanks for sharing that. I know it's not easy. I went to a school like what you're talking about, and where there were only, I don't know, 3 black kids in my class of 100. It wasn't until I went away to middle school and went to like a public school where there was just all kids from all over the city that I realized, like, how fucked up that was. And of course, as a young person, I didn't really have the courage to talk to my classmates about it. But I'm really glad you're able to share that story now, as hard as it is to share. So thank you once again, Devan Sandiford, everybody. All right, we're here for our final storyteller of the night. And before I bring her up, I just want to mention, in case you are inspired tonight and remembered some great story from your awkward teens, we're always looking for pitches. And if you would like, you can email us at awkwardteenageyears@gmail.com and send us a pitch of your story. And maybe you can be up here with us next time, whenever that is, wherever that is. We don't know. I don't know. This is all new. And you can find us on YouTube, as I mentioned earlier, all of our previous shows that we did during the pandemic. You can follow us on social media. We're at Awkward Teenage Years on the Instagram and the Facebook, and we're Awk Teen Years, very awkward, on Twitter. So find us on any of those places. We'd love to interact with you there as well. All right, so our final storyteller for the night. She is a 2-time Grand Slam winner at the Moth, and she's the artistic director and soon to be executive director of the Story Collider, wonderful story organization that's committed to stories about science. Please welcome to the stage, Erin Barker.
I feel very safe with this clean microphone. So my mom left my family right as I was starting puberty, which is really adding insult to injury, if you ask me. If you're gonna abandon your family, try not to do it right when your daughter starts menstruating, especially when you're the only person in the family who understands even remotely how periods work. It's just common courtesy, in my opinion. My dad was raised Southern Baptist in the 50s in West Virginia. So anything connected to menstruation or really reproduction in general makes him very uncomfortable. He was always really good about going to the store to get pads for me, but he would often return with like one of everything they had in the store and this wild look in his eye like he'd been through some kind of perilous ordeal. And I understood in a way because I was scared too. My favorite section of 17 magazine was the part in the back where people would write in their embarrassing stories of things that happened to them. It was called Trauma-Rama. And almost every single one of these stories was about the writer being publicly exposed as someone who menstruates and the resulting shock and horror that followed inevitably. And I lived in terror that I would one day be exposed in a similar manner as someone who has a period, just like a billion other people in the world. And I think my fears were not unfounded. Recently at school, some asshole teacher had decided that our class t-shirts for the year would be white. And so on Spirit Day, everyone knew exactly which of us 12-year-old girls had started wearing a training bra and which of us had not. And I was in the unfortunate latter camp, which was mocked mercilessly. So after that, I knew what I had to do. I had to ask my dad to take me bra shopping. And both of us knew this would be excruciating. But both of us also knew that it had to be done. The situation was not going to resolve itself. I was not going to enter reverse puberty anytime soon. So he took me to Kohl's. And I was browsing, and he seemed to not really know what to do with himself while I was browsing. At first, he came with me into the juvenile lingerie department, and then that didn't feel right. So he just sort of lurked on the periphery after that, which, not a huge improvement. I was shopping as fast as I could, but I had no idea what all the numbers meant and all the sizes. And so by the time we got to the register, we were both very frazzled. And the woman working there seemed to observe this. and in a very ill-advised attempt to diffuse the tension, as she rang up the bras, turned to my dad and said, "They grow up so fast, don't they?" I never wanted to die like I did in that moment. And I think my dad felt the same way, judging by his silent, curt swipe of his credit card. That summer, my dad decided that we were going to go to Myrtle Beach for summer vacation. This is where we always went for summer vacation. This is where all West Virginians always go for summer vacation. This would be the first time that we would go without my mom, though. And my dad was very determined that this trip would be just as much fun as it always had been, if not more fun. He was very adamant about this. And I had a strong feeling that the source of this determination came from the fact that Mom had recently bought a house down the street from us, and she and my new stepfather had just brought home their new baby. Dad needed a win. So I was trying really hard to get on board the fun train. And we drove down to Myrtle Beach. Everything was going great. Dad shaved off his mustache for his casual vacation look, like he always does. And then I wake up that first morning in the hotel, and I have my period. And here's the thing. No matter how many times I carefully reviewed the instructions on the back of the tampon box, I could not figure out how to work the damn things. It felt impossible to me that there was even a hole there. It felt like a brick wall every time I tried. So I went over to my dad, who was currently winded from blowing up every inflatable toy that we'd brought with us. And I said, "Dad, I can't go to the beach today. I got my period." And he looks at me like, kind of confused, and he says, like he's not really sure this is true, "Isn't that what the tampon kind are for?" And I said, "Well, yes, but I don't know how to use tampons." And he stares at me, he's like, "What do you mean you don't know how to use a tampon?" And it's like, "I don't know, I can't find the hole." So he stares at me like he has no idea what the fuck I'm talking about, which is fair, because neither do I. And finally, he just says, "Fine. Your brother and I will go down to the beach. You can stay here in the hotel room, whatever." And so they leave, and I can tell that my dad is hurt. I can tell that he doesn't really believe me, that maybe he thinks that I wish that I were in Paris with my mom and my new stepdad and their new baby instead of on this vacation with him. And I'm just so mad. I stomp around angrily for a while. I'm mad at my mom for not being there to help me in this situation. I'm mad at my dad for not being my mom. I'm mad at my body for having the audacity to make this happen at this exact point in time. And I'm thinking about all of those vacations that we used to take, all of those photographs of my family together on the beach, building sandcastles. And I'm so angry that it will never look like that again. So I tried watching a show hosted by Mario Lopez for a while. And I think clearly I cannot spend the entire day like this. So I think there has to be a way, there has to be something I can do to still be a part of this vacation. So I decide that I will put a pad inside my swimsuit and put jean shorts on top, and probably nobody will ever know, right? Great, it's a great plan. So I do this, and I go down to the beach, and I find my dad and my brother, and they're so happy to see me, and right away it's just like old times, and we're building sandcastles, and we take the rafts out into the ocean, and we're riding the waves, and I'm having so much fun that I completely forget that I'm menstruating. And then this big wave comes, and it crashes over top of us, and we're all kind of knocked underwater for a moment. And when I resurface, I see it. Drifting just tantalizingly out of my reach. Winding around families and couples and girls who go, "Ew!" It's my pad. And I realize this is my trauma-rama moment. It is happening to me right now. I should be thinking of what I'm going to write to 17, the words I'm going to use, like mortifying. But I look back at my brother and my dad, and they're back on the raft, oblivious to all of this, waving at me to come back over. And suddenly, I don't really care. You know, in a strange incidence of art imitating life, I got my period just before the show in the green room. I was hanging out with these 5 dudes. And I think you probably can tell that has all of the ingredients of a Trauma-Rama moment right there. Here I am on stage. It might be that, Grant and David's experience of this story was very meta. I don't know. But you can't let the threat of Trauma-Rama get in the way of living your life. And if anyone has a tampon, please throw it on stage. Thank you.
Erin Barker, everybody. Always so good with the blend of the humor and the vulnerability there. I think I told you the first time we met, the class that I took that got me interested in storytelling, the very first day, the teacher played us a story from Erin Barker, from The Moth. And she's the master. So one more time, Erin Barker. All right, folks, that's it. That's our show. I want to thank you all for coming out and for watching at home on the live stream. All of the proceeds from your tickets tonight go to support this theater, the Kraine Theater. As they're reopening, there are a lot more shows coming up. Please, stay in touch with them on social media. Check out their website, frigid.nyc, for all the upcoming shows. And we hope to see you back here for us sometime soon as well. So thank you so much for coming out tonight, and be safe out there, and we'll see you again soon.